Welcome to Small Business Big Results, a show where we share stories from small business owners and fast-growing startups. I'm your host, Brian Dean, and today I have Julia McCoy with me. Julia is the creator of the Content Transformation System and the Content Hacker. Starting at only 19 years old, she built a brand from $75 to over $5 million in gross revenue. She's also a 6-time best-selling author and the host of the Content Transformation Podcast. Today's topic is so important, not just for small business owners, but for really anyone that works. And that is how to work less and earn more. To many, this idea might seem kind of absurd, but it can be done. And Julia and I are going to discuss how to maintain a healthy work-life balance no matter where you are in your career. So welcome to the show, Julia.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's an honor to be here. I'm very excited.
Oh, we're super excited to have you too. And when I was creating a guest list, so to speak, for the show, you're one of the first people that came to mind just because you have such a depth of experience. You've been in the business world for so long in different businesses, different industries, different economies. You've seen it all. So I really wanted to understand your perspective on an important topic that is becoming seemingly more important with remote work, which is work-life balance. So my first question about that is, when it comes to work-life balance, what does that even mean to you? What is it? What is it not?
Yes, great question. Well, I think as an entrepreneur, it's so different than an employee answering this question, right? Because as an entrepreneur, it's really hard to shut it off. It's almost impossible when it's your business because you can keep building, especially if you love doing it. Like the excitement is there, the motivation is there. So you just want to keep building. So for me, a work-life balance looks like, first of all, I think embracing that work and life can coexist. I'll switch over to my phone. I'll be on mobile versus desktop, but I'll be outside playing, and then I'll put it up. I have a 8-month-old and an 8-year-old as we're recording this. So I have little kids that I'm playing with half the time of my day. So being an entrepreneur, I think really allows me to, take it mobile and not worry. I have a great team that's doing a lot of good things in the background. And then the other thing for me is just having set times where I do not work and really being clear about, okay, that's booked off. Nope. And for me, that's evening. I cannot pick up my computer in the evening. It's a no matter what's happening. I don't care what fires are happening. It's just that computer stays there and I don't touch it. And my day goes so much better if I have those boundaries at the end of the day. Yeah,
that's good. Everyone has a little bit of a different definition, I assume, but it's funny because ours are really similar. For me, I'm a schedule person too. Like I have entrepreneur friends who work Sunday nights, Saturday mornings. Like they just work whenever, wherever. And that boggles my mind. I work at a factory. I'm like punch in, punch out, and I'm done. Like that's kind of my mentality is like a coal miner. So for me, I cannot imagine doing that. For other people, maybe it's like you said, there's also the flexibility aspect where you can take the work with you if needed. And that's something that's really nice. So yeah, I just wanted to hear your perspective on what that is because it's a term we hear all the time, but I've never really heard it specifically defined. So when it comes to work-life balance, what are some misconceptions people have about it?
I think that there's such a misconception around I will be able to separate and have like very clear brackets where there's no overflow and I can turn off work or turn off rest time and just work. And the truth is like we're creative human beings and creative human beings have different flow. So you kind of have to lean into that flow to tap into what could be like, for me, the next best-selling book, the next blog topic that's going to win for both of us. So to tap into that, you really have to feel and be creative. And that's something I've learned. So while I'm very focused, like whenever it's time to write, doors are shut, you can't interrupt me. Like the child is in daycare, I write. If I have interruptions, it's not good. It's not focused time. But so the focus is key, but then embracing that, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be ebbs and flows and tapping into when you feel most creative. Maybe you wake up Tuesday morning and you had a bad meal the night before and you're just tired, embrace that. Don't push through it because the content you create for us as creators, it has to be really good. And one great piece can be exponential growth for our business, right? So tapping into that creativity versus, okay, today is a day I don't feel so good, but I'm still going to push through. No, like give yourself the chance to rest and then regroup the next day, and you'll be a better entrepreneur and creator.
Yeah, that's really good advice, Julia, because I think for me, there's different types of entrepreneurs. There's the big picture person. There's like the operations person. I'm more of like the grind, like do the same thing every day, set a goal, just do it all. Like just do it. It's good to a certain extent, but like you mentioned, if you're not feeling well, it's going to kill your work-life balance to try to push through it. Plus, it's not a good mentality to have in general, because like you said, one creative idea could just exponentially change everything, or just take the thing you're working on and make it obsolete because you're doing something better. So having a no sugar grindstone to a certain extent, I think is helpful, but only to a certain extent. And sometimes those days you feel bad, you're hungover, whatever, can be the best days for spurring creativity, getting out of your routine, and just hitting restart like you would on your computer on your mind. But you have to take advantage of those opportunities as they come.
Yes. And for example, like if it's YouTube time where I know I need to record the next YouTube video, it'll be YouTube week for me, not YouTube day. So then I just kind of let that week happen, and then I'll see, okay, what day do I really wake up and feel like recording? And that is the weirdest thing, because they say you can't follow feelings, and that's true. Whenever it's time to actually do it, you've got to shut the door. You have to focus. I've seen that be a breaking point for entrepreneurs. You know, they don't create that clear wall. Okay, it's focus time. But if you let your creativity lead you in what you're doing the days of the week, I've seen, just for me, better output. You can tell, like, I'm on video, enjoying to be on video today versus the cat dragged me by my hair and I'm just doing this. Big difference.
It shows, I think, when you can tell when you have that extra oomph and you're just couldn't wait to get out there and put something into the world. It shows, whether it's a video or a blog post or a podcast or whatever. If you're just kind of showing up, you did create that piece of content, you put it out there. But as you know, Julia, as a content creator, there's like a huge 99-1 80-20 principle that one piece of content is going to be worth 20 or 50 pieces if it's really done well. And those are not usually the ones you just do because you're obligated. You feel obligated to do it. There's some inspiration there.
Yes, that's the truth.
So switching gears a little bit about more efficiency, being effective, earning more and working less at the same time. So what are some strategies that you recommend someone that wants to start looking at work from this mentality start with?
Yes, I thought that was such a great question. We're really in an age where I think the solopreneur can do so much versus maybe just even 3 or 5 years ago. It was like, oh, you're just a one-man show. You're just a one-woman show. Like that was looked down on. But today it's not only celebrated, like we see it in books, we see it as like the reason you want to work with that person because you're getting that person. So being a solopreneur, a team of one, a smaller team is, I think, a really powerful direction to head in. And for me, like being a consultant, which I've been doing ever since I sold the agency in 2021, I've been a consultant / coach full time. I don't love the term coach, but it's kind of attached itself to me because that's what I've been doing. And you get paid really well, and your expertise gets turned into hands-on help for someone. And that is life-changing. And you can do that being one person so easily. I have a team, it's under 8 people at Content Hacker, and I'm going to keep it that way because I really like having only 8 people versus 100. So it's so easy, I think, to be a solopreneur and be that one person type of show and still have a very successful and profitable business. Yeah,
that's true. Actually, one of our other guests on this series is Elaine Potfeld, who is kind of an expert on the whole solopreneur movement. I mean, she's not just a documenter of it, she's an inspiration for a lot of people that want to get into it. And I've been in a couple of her books, and when I read the stories, it's so inspirational because you read about the business and then at the end, it's like one person did this. You're like, what?
Wow.
One person like ran a multi-million-dollar swimsuit company, like crazy stuff like that.
Wow.
So you're absolutely right that there's opportunities abound. I mean, of course, these are like the rare unicorns, blah, 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 but
yes, it's hard.
Still possible.
Yes.
And most of these people had tried and failed before. hitting it big. It's very rare someone's like, I tried this thing, it was my first business, it took off. It does happen, but it's relatively rare, myself included. I was 4-time failed business before I found success. So anyway, that's sort of here and there. But I'm glad you mentioned the solopreneur thing, because I think it can be intimidating for someone to think, oh, there's either like I work somewhere, or I have this huge company with staff and widgets and all this stuff, and there's like this middle ground where you're the solopreneur. And with all the tools and technology available today, and how easy it is to get freelancers to help, it's really like a golden age for solopreneurs. Really.
Yes, well said.
Yeah. So speaking of that, like people that are inside a company, they're not a business owner themselves. How can they sort of go for this, earning more and working less approach inside of their company?
And to clarify, we're talking about employees, not just entrepreneurs. Yes. Great question. I think that, I've built pathways around this. It's in books. I know you're in my books. And one of the pathways that I've taught a lot is starting with skills. And even before skills, like mindset is a big part of it, right? Like you have to have the right mindset to even embrace, how do I grow my skill? How do I sell it for more money? And then how do I exponentially increase from there? So you have to have the mindset. And something I talk a lot about is the mindset of a worker versus a boss. And this applies even if you're in a job. Like you have to start thinking like a boss. It's really hard to make exponential moves if you're not thinking like the boss of your own career, your own life. If you're still stuck in something that, unfortunately, the system kind of outputs a person that has the worker mentality, because that's what we see around us, the 9-to-5s, the jobs, which no shame at all in that. But to take the next step in your career, you have to kind of think outside the box and think like the boss of your own life. So it does start with mindset, but then it's all about the skill. If you hone a skill, and especially in this age of content creation, writing, video production, podcast editing, on and on and on, you can pick a creative skill, get really good at it, hone it. And if that's like what you were hired for in your job, and you continue to get better and better at your skill, then you can go for more and more income and then a higher level position. But like it's all in the last 10 years, I've interviewed tens of thousands of writers, just if we're talking about writing as a skill, and time again, it's that skill. And the skill is so underrated because we had a lot of people rely on the degree, the piece of paper, the diploma, the job with a fancy title. But really, all I want, if I'm an employer hiring, or your employer that's looking at what you're doing, they want to see that skill grow and grow. And we live in an amazing age where we can take courses and we can learn from mentors that have led in that skill field. So it's like, I tell people, take advantage of that. It's literally the only way I would shortcut my skill, is to take the hand of a mentor, learn from them, and then get ahead light years versus struggling and trying to learn it all yourself. So tap into that skill, grow your skill, and then everything else really follows. You'll see more income. You can ask the boss for a pay raise or go after a different position. And it's all the doors will just open because you started with the skill.
And how would you recommend someone find that skill that's going to be in demand or is a good fit for them personally?
Yes. So I have a non-traditional way of looking at it. What I tell people to do first is think about what you love doing, because it's really hard to get up and do the thing that makes great money or elevates you in the industry if you don't love it. So like if I didn't love writing, there's no way I would have made it to 11 years running a writing agency, overseeing writers, training them, and then all those steps leading to more steps, and today Content Hacker. So if I didn't love writing, there's just no way I would have lasted, because the truth is, like you and I both know, there's a lot of late nights and a lot of hard work that goes into turning your skill into income. So find what you love doing, and it's really hard to just know that, I think, unless you try different things. So it's totally okay to like what I'm doing at Content Hacker. I coach a lot of new entrepreneurs and help them launch their brand. And I tell them, just base it on your name and try a bunch of things, and don't have a specialty until you know, okay, this is something I really love doing. Like I love podcast strategy. Okay, I'm going to build a package around that, scale it, and sell it. And you can go super niche like that and still do really well. So the world is your oyster when it comes to picking a skill and monetizing it. It's just, what do you love doing? Start from there and just practice in your field to find out what that is. And then you'll actually have something you can grow for, like I did the next 10 years and enjoy it, not hate it as you grow it.
Yeah, I had a story recently that reminded me of what you're saying. Is I ran into a guy on LinkedIn who posted something, and his whole thing was about content repurposing. That was his specialty, his skill. He didn't necessarily good at writing or necessarily good at coming up with original ideas, but he was good at taking your existing content library, whether it's YouTube videos, podcast episodes, blog posts, turning them into other formats, short form social media posts, TikTok videos, whatever. And I reached out to him to ask if he wanted to work with me on my other project, Exploring Topics. And he charged like an arm and a leg for his services. Good for him. This is a good example that he was able to get this really high rate for his services because he has a skill that's really in demand. People realize that creating content is expensive. You have all this content sitting around. You might as well repurpose it, but how do you do it? And what content do you start with? And then what platforms do you put it on? And it is kind of a specialized skill to do that. And like you said, a niche is fine. This is as niche as it gets. And the guy is doing great. So it's a good example of the guy had a skill, he worked somewhere. He developed a skill there, content repurposing there. Now he's on his own sort of doing the same thing. And then if he wanted to go work somewhere again, he could go to get a great salary because he did it by himself. He did it in a company. So the skill travels with you, whether you become an entrepreneur, then go back to a company or whatever path. It's not going to leave you as long as, it's an in-demand skill that people will always want. And you can't go wrong with things that businesses want. Writing is always going to be in demand. Creating videos, creating podcasts, always going to be demand for this stuff. It's not like it's going to evaporate overnight.
Yeah.
So when it comes to work-life balance inside a company, who is responsible for it? Is it the individual employees? Is it the corporate culture? Is it the founder? Who is in charge of work-life balance at a company?
Yes. Well, this is a good question, especially for me to answer because I used to run such a big company. And what we saw is it really takes both parties to create that healthy work-life balance. You as an employee, as an individual, you have to be in control of, okay, these are my set boundaries. This is my PTO. This is what I really need. And as upfront as you can be in the hiring process, in the work process, the earlier you let that person know, the better. So communication around your boundaries is key. That helped us through so many hurdles where sometimes a lot was riding on one person and we had to realize, okay, we need to train someone to be able to take over her role so that she can have that time off. And it's sometimes hard to pause as a startup founder. I'm not saying that, not making excuses because the founder really does set the culture. There's responsibility there. But whenever you're running a business and you're the founder, it can be hard to stop and remember, okay, I need to give these people a break because you're in the trenches building that company and it's growing so fast. So I think the founder and the employee both have responsibility to create that with those boundaries, and this is what I need in terms of time off. And something we saw whenever I was hiring writers, we would get a lot of writers, and all we hired was contracted people. So we didn't have employees. We saw a lot of writers that were especially newer, very talented people, and they just didn't know how to shut it off. So I would actually go to them, email them and say, hey, I think you're approaching burnout. Why don't you have this boundary? And I would suggest something like, for example, why don't you, after 5 p.m., just stop responding to Slack, click up notifications, all of it. Just turn it off and know that you're not going to lose your job, because some contractors came from a really toxic place where it was if I didn't respond right away, I might lose my job. So you never know what they've been through before they end up in your team. So I would go and tell that, and these new writers benefited so much from that. And they were they would email me Monday morning and they'd be like, I shut it off on Friday and I didn't even look at Slack like you said I could, and it was life-changing. So sometimes just reaching out and communicating, if you're the founder and the leader, that can go so far with that contractor, because a lot of times, they're trying to pay their bills. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what kind of requirements until you actually tell them hey, you can turn it off. And that little communication piece went so far with our team. And it really created some good culture.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely more of a, there are certain things that are more like grassroots. I think this is one of the things that's more top down. Even though I usually don't like top down stuff, I think this really is because, like you said, the people on your staff are looking to you for direction. They're looking to you for what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what's expected, what's not expected. And if you kind of don't make it clear, they're, like you said, if they came from a place where you're expected to be on at all times and people are impressed that you replied to Slack on Sunday morning, then that's one thing. But if you don't want them to, you specifically want them to rest, then that's something totally different. But they might not know it unless you tell them. Also, leading by example,
Yes.
of course, is always good. My philosophy has always been make everything as async as possible and take weekends off. And that is sort of how I approach it. Those two things seem to be the sort of the master keys for not mastering work-life balance, but like getting closer to it. Because by just having async, you remove a lot of like meetings and calls and things that are very stressful for people to sort of show up on. And a lot of times aren't necessary to execute on their jobs. And then taking weekends off is just a simple thing that's just like, I don't think it increases productivity that much to work over the weekend. It probably actually hurts it over the long term. So it's an easy win there. For me, the weekends thing is just simple because it's easy to say Saturday and Sunday, we basically don't work. If there's like an emergency thing, a launch or some problem, yes, but for the most part, I don't work on the weekends. And I sort of, that expectation is stated, but also shown more importantly in action. I find that's easier than like hours or, it's just an easy thing that's sort of a quick win. And then all the other stuff's bonuses like retreats and personal time off and all that stuff is a lot easier when you have the baseline, which is my opinion, which is async stuff and the weekends off. So you mentioned having a lot of contractors in the past. And it's amazing how many you had. How many did you have at like the peak that you were working with?
We had around 109, I think, at the highest point.
That's absolutely insane. That must be.
It was. I won't lie.
Oh my Lord, that is crazy. So, yeah. Next thing I would like to touch on is outsourcing, because that's one of the first things people think of when they're like, okay, I want to, earn less and earn more and work less. I need to just outsource something. And for me, I was introduced to the outsourcing world by the 4-hour work week, which helped me get started with it. But I was naive about how hard it is to get contractors, especially, to deliver great work. So what are some pieces of advice you would have for someone that's never outsourced anything and are looking to outsource some tasks?
Yes, great question. I have helped a lot of early entrepreneurs here, and I think the answer I found really differs for everyone. There can be people that are great on their sales calls and they should never outsource that because they're closing 100% of their leads, and that's money in your bank. So don't touch that role. Don't outsource that. And then there's people that are terrible at sales roles and they're good at delivering what it is they're selling. So they should hire for that first. So I think, where I have people start is like, think of your pros and cons. What do you love doing in your company or the brand you just started, no matter what stage you're at? And then what do you really dislike doing? What are the things that just feel like, okay, I'm just doing this to do it? So that's your outsource list, the things that you're not a genius at. And I think we hear that advice, right? Like, stay in your zone of genius. And it's true. Like, that's when your company grows, is when you can really live in your zone of genius and keep building from there. And a lot of the people that I guide, the first hire they need is often a writer, because writing is the basis of everything. Our sales, our marketing, communication, blog posts, emails, you name it. So really good writing, like, that carries you so far. So I've told people, as soon as you hit like $2,000 a month in profit, put that back into writing, because get writing off your plate. You're probably not good at it anyway, unless you're a writer. Yeah. So you'll actually have somebody that's good at it, elevating your marketing, your brand, your voice, and then things just grow from there. But that pros and cons list is always a good place to start when you're just like, I don't know what to outsource. I don't really know what I'm good at versus what I'm not good at. So just make a list and find out, and then sit on that. And for us, whenever we went and hired contractors, it was important to have some structure. So we would have like a writer and then an editor reviewing what they wrote. So if you need to have structure, plan through that as well. Think there is some hierarchy in a team, even when they're contractors. And the way I think of it at Content Hacker today is everyone's a partner. And I tell them that, like, as soon as we're on the interview and I know they're a great fit, I'm like, so when I hire you, I'm not your boss, I'm your partner. And that has like made such a difference with the amount of, because we hire really high level people at Content Hacker and we're a very small team. So if that's the kind of team you're building, just ditching the hierarchy sometimes can be really great. People love that environment. Every time I've said it, it's had such a great reaction.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, before I started Backlinko, I was a freelancer myself. And so I've seen both sides of it. I was a freelance writer, actually. So
same here.
I can tell you it's a thankless job where, and it's a cutthroat world on these freelancer platforms. One, that piece of bad feedback can really sink you. So it's kind of a higher pressure environment. So if I was, if you hired me and said, I'm like, oh, I really want to impress Julia. And you said, look, we're all partners. We're all in this together. It would take so much of the edge off and I'd be able to do better work because I wouldn't be thinking of it as this like high pressure situation. So yeah, a lot of that, like for me, I don't have a huge distinction with how I communicate with staff versus contractors. How pay and benefits and roles, that's totally different. But when it comes to communication, I treat them all with a really high level of respect because, first of all, a lot of times they do super important work that you'd be in deep trouble without. Just because they're outsourced, it doesn't mean their role isn't important. And also, sometimes these people will be with you for like 10 years. The same person, you hire them for a random project, they did a good job. Oh, this person's pretty good. And then you keep working with them. Next thing you know, 10 years goes by, you're working with the same person. I have 2 people on my team that fit that role. So, they're contractors, but, I don't look at them as such. So part of it is, it's like you said, is the role itself. And then when you get them on board, have high expectations for them. But if they're delivering, it's communicate with them like they're not just a robot to deliver writing or deliver YouTube videos or whatever they happen to be doing for you. So switching gears a little bit about tools. When it comes to being more efficient, obviously tools can be a huge part of that. So any tools that you use or recommend that can help small business owners work smarter and not necessarily harder?
Yes, that's a great question. I think the first tool that I've been recommending, especially this year with AI, just all around us, everywhere we look in the content space is, I tell people, if you're still using a human transcriber, like you are wasting time. So one of my favorite tools these days for transcribing all my YouTube videos, course content, we upload captions to everything. It just, those closed captions really, really help because you never know. People are not necessarily listening. They're reading and they're watching. Yep. So we're in that environment, so you have to do that. So one of my favorite tools is called Sonics, and it's just sonics.ai, and you can get something transcribed in minutes, and it's so accurate. So I, moved away from all the freelancers, and it was a really, it wasn't my favorite job to hire a freelancer for anyway, because it didn't pay well. It was just grunt work. So I think that's where AI replaced what was already very inefficient. So transcribing, that's a great baseline just to get AI for, and it's so much cheaper and faster. And then other tools I love, I use Airtable to manage my entire content calendar. It's just, you can scroll through it at a glance and you can upload assets and collaborate. So it's a little bit more than a spreadsheet, but it's not more than a spreadsheet enough to be complicated, which I hate. I hate anything that complicates, just keeping it simple. And my whole team, my business planning, like what offers are we going to launch? What are we going to do in November, December? All of that gets mapped out on boards in ClickUp, which I've really enjoyed. So it's like a step up from Trello. You get a lot more functionality with assigning and bringing in your contractors, but you can still see it at a glance, which is really nice for looking at your next year, your next 90 days of planning. So tools definitely make my life easier. I live in these 3 tools all the time. And then the other tools, I think you and I both love SEMrush for sure. For SEMrush, I live in that one. I look at my data, look at our growth around keyword rankings and what can we optimize. So my team and I are both looking at it every day. And if we lose a ranking, we'll hop on that content piece the next day and optimize it to see why we lost it. And so all of those things, that's your pulse. Tools really are how you get a pulse on your business and how you stay current.
Yeah, tools kind of get a bad rap. Like, oh, tools are, not going to help. Some cool tools are game changing. Like for me, the same way, I'm an SEO obsessed person. So for me, Semrush is like, if it went down, I would not even know what to do with myself. So right. There are so many tools. Like another one we use is Notion. I don't know if you've used Notion before.
Yes.
Notion is really,
I haven't used it a lot.
That's like, it's kind of hard to describe. It's sort of like almost like a board that you can do anything with. And it sounds intimidating, but it's a huge company now. That's where we put everything. That's where we communicate instead of Slack. It's where we plan stuff. It's where we have documentation. What I like about it is just that everything's in one place, like Semrush. Like instead of using 10 different tools, it's one. You have everything. So it isn't like my documentation's here, my SOPs are here, my goals are here, my communication. It's all kind of in one place. And it's been actually huge for running. I was running 2 companies at once until I sold Backlinko, obviously, to Semrush last year. So now we're going to transition into the rapid fire questions. The rapid fire, so I'll just get started with the first one. What's kind of something new that's happening in your life right now?
I'm writing a fiction series. That's completely new. Really? It's called Earth Begins. Cool. Earthbegins.com is the waitlist, and it's a neo-Western apocalyptic genre, so it's very, very niche, and so that's definitely new.
I gotta check that out. Sounds great. Right up my alley. So how do you usually start your day?
I start my day slow. So I am getting coffee, lemon water, sitting, reading, meditating, praying, and I don't even look at the clock. And that was a game changer for me. I started doing that, I would say 3 years ago, versus just plunging into everything. You
don't even look at you don't know what time it is when you're doing all that stuff.
No, I'm not even
amazing.
aware. I just wake up whenever. I'm like, this is the life of an entrepreneur, right? You can create your own time. Let's do it.
That is awesome.
It's been cool. Yeah.
So cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, that's hard. I've thought about living abroad, but then I think I would miss creature comforts. So I'm going to have to stick with Texas.
All right, Texas it is. There you go. That's a real Texas answer. Anywhere, Texas. What was your first job?
Working at McDonald's, actually. I was a grill worker making sandwiches, and I did not make them very well. I messed up a lot.
That is crazy. Wow. What did you have, like a movie, a book, a TV show that really changed the trajectory of your life?
Can I quote a recent one? There was one I really, really liked on Amazon Prime this year called The Rings of Power. And it was like, it just opened up creativity for me. So I'm probably going to watch it again. So nice. I don't really love TV. Like I'm not your typical, nerd out on a show, watch it, rewatch it. So that was probably a first time for me.
Cool. What's your go-to snack?
I am a very healthy eater. It's an obsession. So it's typically like nuts or a salad.
All right. Yeah. I can't even make fun of you because I'm the exact same way.
Oh, that's great.
So if you could learn any language, what would it be?
I would say French. I've watched a lot of movies based in France that I've really liked. And I'm like, that language looks pretty cool.
What time of day do you feel most inspired and ready to work?
I would say like right at 10 a.m., like 10 to 11. That's my peak. I'll usually leave that for writing a book or building a new product. Like that is peak time for me. Okay.
And would you prefer owning your own small business or being the leader of a really cool big company?
Oh, no, thanks. I'll take the small business.
No? Okay. That's what I figured.
Too many struggles.
Yeah. And back to another snack question. Love snacks here at Small Business Big Results. When it comes to snacks, do you prefer salty or sweet?
Salty.
Okay. They're going to say neither.
Neither.
They're going to say veggies.
I'll add salt to stuff, so.
Yeah. And that's it. So that wraps up this episode of Small Business Big Results. Thanks so much, Julia, for coming on. You dropped so many knowledge bombs that I think a lot of small business owners can not just chew on and think about, but also put into action. So thanks so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
So that's all for this episode of Small Business Big Results. Head over to this video right here for the next episode in the series, where I'll be chatting with Dan Martell about why social media is so important for B2B businesses. Thanks so much for watching.